Hi guys, I'm Lisa. Welcome back to the channel. Throughout the EEOC process, both we and our employers have an obligation to act in good faith. When one party doesn't meet that very basic obligation, it can cast doubt on everything they say or do. Bad faith makes or breaks cases. I'm not an attorney, but after doing some research online this week, I can say that the consensus seems to be that you can't prove bad faith directly. What you can do is show evidence that your employer failed to act in good faith. In discrimination cases where you need to show that your employer had discriminatory motives, bad faith can go a long way toward establishing that. And even in cases where you don't have to prove your employer's discriminatory motives, being able to prove they acted in bad faith could significantly bump up your damages. The better we are at recognizing and documenting our employer's lack of good faith, the better our chances that EEO will see it and act accordingly. In my case, EEOC's Office of Federal Operations turned down NASA's request for an appeal. They said they had observed a lack of good faith on NASA's part, and they cited a number of behaviors that led them to that conclusion, along with the evidence that those behaviors actually happened. So today I thought I'd walk you through some of the behaviors and evidence that EEO cited. It might give you some good insight on EEOC logic. Now, because of time, I'm not going to be able to cover all the behaviors that EEOC cited in this video, but I could do a part 2 later if that's something you guys are interested in. Let me know in the comments. So with that, let's get into the behaviors. The first bad faith behavior that EEO cited was my boss's unwillingness to participate in the interactive dialogue about my reasonable accommodations. And as evidence, the first thing they pointed to was my boss's own admission at my hearing that she had never discussed reasonable accommodation with me. She tried to claim that was because I had never used the magic words reasonable accommodation, so she didn't realize that's what I needed. But EEOC didn't buy it. I had submitted several different versions of NASA's request form for reasonable accommodation. Every one of those versions had the magic words reasonable accommodation in bold right at the top of the form. So much for that excuse. That kind of dishonesty, if you can show it, is excellent evidence of your employer's lack of good faith. Bad faith behavior number 2 was that EEOC found my boss unreasonably delayed acting on my request for reasonable accommodation. Over a 75-day period, I was forced to resubmit my request for reasonable accommodation 5 times, each time because of some petty requirement that only existed in my boss's head as far as I could tell. The last time I had to resubmit it, it was because my boss was unhappy about a phrase that I had capitalized for emphasis, and she refused to act on my request until I removed the capital letters from it. I had documented all my boss's delays, so I had a good amount of evidence. To me, it seemed like my AJ couldn't quite believe that NASA had let my boss get by with doing something so petty, so he kept giving her and the diversity manager chances to clear it up. He asked them about it in a few different ways at a few different points in their testimony. They always admitted what happened and tried to justify it all over again. So after a while, he saw they'd really done it. So deliberate obstructions and petty excuses are also evidence of bad faith. I removed the capital letters and resubmitted my form, along with a cover letter that said I wasn't going to be changing my request anymore. I told NASA that I felt like I'd already made all the changes I could in light of my medical condition, which was still urgent and unaddressed. I wrote that cover letter because when the EEOC saw my boss throwing a hissy fit about capital letters, I also wanted them to think about what that meant to me in terms of my medical needs and how my rights had been violated. I wanted them to see how cruel the pettiness was, from my perspective. And it turns out that my cover letter not only helped EEOC see that, but it also forced NASA to change tactics, which brings me to bad faith behavior number 3. EEOC found that NASA accommodated me on paper, but not in practice. NASA claimed they gave me all the accommodations I asked for. They had a form signed by my boss that said so. She let me use those accommodations once. As evidence, I had a lot of emails that I'd sent to my boss requesting to use my reasonable accommodations and replies from her requiring me to take leave instead because she stated that was her preference. My AJ wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, so he asked her some questions to clear up what happened. And her answers made it really clear she only had one priority, her own personal supervisory preferences, not my medical needs and not my legal rights. And disregarding our needs and rights like that shows a definite lack of good faith. The heart of bad faith is hypocrisy, preaching one thing and doing another. And too many of us who have filed EEOC claims know what it's like to deal with an employer who does that. EEOC called NASA out on their hypocrisy, and I thought maybe sharing some of what EEOC had to say to them might help you do the same with your employer. Maybe win your case. I'll see you soon. Till then, take care and hang in. Fight smart.